This is Joy Asonye Live. Thank you so much for being part of the program. As usual, here on the program, we'll be talking about very important political issues trending around Nigeria, and today we'll be focusing on the off-cycle elections, INEC's preparedness, and the appreciation of Nigerians. Are we there yet when it comes to trust and confidence that should be given to the electoral umpire? INEC has also announced that distribution of sensitive materials have begun in the 3 states that will be having elections on Saturday, the 11th of November. This was done in the presence of party representatives, journalists, and security. Would this also curb that hitches we often see, INEC always complaining of sensitive materials not coming on time? Well, we have in the studio Barrister Mike Adinye. He is a political analyst, and we'll be talking about how these elections can indeed be free, fair, and credible. Thank you so much for being part of the program,
Thank
Barrister.
you. The pleasure is mine.
Yes. We'll go for a short break and return to discuss more. Stay with us. Welcome back from that. So, Barrister Mike Adinye, I mean, after the general elections, so many people were disillusioned. I don't know if it's part of the Nigerian situation where everybody just expects their candidates to win, or indeed the elections were marred with so many problems and flaws that it affected the turnout or result we eventually saw. However, a lot of people were disillusioned. However, looking at this off-cycle elections that are coming up now, do you think there's going to be voter apathy because of that, or Nigerians are gearing up and gearing up strong?
Well, in every third world country, such a misgiving, such a complaint, are bound to happen. Well, Nigeria being a developing country, a third world country, it's not strange at all that some of these complaints came on board. But when you look at this, like the title of today's session is off-season, what that means is that we're not going to see the hula ballo, the shenanigans of the moment, desperation from politicians. This has given INEC, the enablement to narrow its focus to, few states in the country, and the security agencies will be, at their game, to make sure that some of those misgivings that took place in the last general election would no longer take place at this time.
Okay, but what do you think the people, the electorates are feeling in these 3 states?
Well, definitely, I won't be surprised if there's this misgivings or voters' apathy, because the last election was characterized by so much of irregularities and disenchantment, disillusion by Nigerians. So if there's voters' apathy at this time, I don't see it. It's not strange. So what is left, for the electoral umpire or some of the contestants to do is to see how they can talk Nigerians, especially those in those key states, the 3 states where elections will take place, on how to come out of that and believe that there's a better tomorrow, that today cannot be better than tomorrow. So once that happens, I see, them being re-conscientized or reoriented, and then make sure to see that they come out to cast their votes during the elections.
Does it concern you when people roll their eyes as INEC is once again promising that it's going to be hitch-free, they have everything under control, they're collaborating with the security agencies, they're also collaborating with the election observers? I remember that argument when election observers submitted reports. INEC really did not agree with some of those reports, but here we are again collaborating with them to ensure that we have a hitch-free elections. Having really observed the manner in which INEC is taking the preparation so far, are you confident that some of those hitches will be addressed in this elections?
Based on the last elections, some of these promises are not strange. In each election, we see INEC coming out to make promises. At the end of the day, we see something different from what they have promised.
Oh, here we go again.
At this point in time, we don't believe it. It's better, when it's acted than when it is said. We want to see it practicalized, when it materializes, where credible, candidates emerge at the end of the day, or where those who have been supported by the electorate or political sovereign emerge at the end of the day, that's the only time we'll say, yes, it's Uhuru, it's better. But in as much as that has not come to play, and based on our antecedents, we would take the promises made by INEC with a pinch of salt until when what they have promised actually comes to pass.
When people say that we shouldn't just sit back and wait for INEC to do as it pleases them, or we should, what do they expect people to do? I remember after the general elections, civil society organizations, a lot of people really criticized INEC and the manner in which they conducted the elections. But what is indeed expected of the Nigerian citizen when things do not go the right way?
Well, what is expected is the voters' apathy. That's all. I don't see anything strange.
But voter apathy doesn't help anyone.
But in as much as we have continued to go that route, in as much as when people complain, security agencies or security men are mobilized to make sure that they are punished for complaining justly. I don't see people having confidence in whatever comes to play, whatever is promised, until when the right thing is done. Until when we deviate from the norm, because it has become as if it's a regular practice. Situations where INEC would continue to promise, at the end of the day we see something different. We have lost confidence in INEC. It's left for it to wash itself or purge itself of the irregularities of the past and to a path of progress. It's only at that point that even the youths will have confidence in INEC. But in as much as things continue to go the same way, irrespective of all the promises made, and money, is this monies or money? Pumped into the system. At the end of the day,
however you call
happens,
it, whatever you call it, Adinye, it is still a lot of funds that go into these elections.
Yes, unfortunately, we're talking about elections today because I had thought that I would no longer have anything to do with election until when we see it being practicalized. I don't want it, to get on studio or to come into the studio to begin to condemn wherein nothing happens or no changes are recorded.
Okay, so but are you confident that there will be changes this time?
There's no
because we
like
have also said that, you also said that
yes,
they are not overwhelmed. This is not a general election.
I will not believe INEC anymore because the orientation we got last time in our last elections and what happened is enough to discourage any right-thinking citizen of this country from believing in the promises made by INEC.
Okay, and then another question would be, having seen what transpired and then the Supreme Court judgment, the appeal courts and election tribunals and all of that, what do you think a typical politician going into these elections has learned?
Have they learned anything? All we see manifesting is desperation for power. Go and try your luck. If it favors you, fine. Like one philosopher who defined politics to be madness of the many for the benefit of a few. Once they get into office or offices, as the case may be, you no longer see them displaying what they portrayed themselves to be prior to the election. So it's those misgivings will continue, to haunt us, and then the wounds created by INEC in the last election will continue to haunt us until when we have something that will heal us properly. Will they call it opium? When that opium manifest, or when opium is used to heal the wounds that have been created by INEC.
It's opium to heal. Yes. Opium is just, it's not peripheral. I mean,
opium is something that will ameliorate.
Douse it for the moment.
Yes, but it may not completely heal, but to at least
for the moment is where I'm stressing it. For the moment. Don't we look for something sustainable, something that is more long-term? But I want us to talk security aspect of elections. Unfortunately, Bayelsa, for instance, it's rife with so much violence. Pre-elections, actually, there's been so much talk of clashes, of one political party clashing with another. In fact, I read about Edwin Clark cautioning one of the candidates, especially the candidate of the All Progressive Party, that's Honorable Timipri Silva, about the body language your deputy is using, the body language of the APC. Caution them. We should not have elections that is shrouded with or characterized with so much violence. Kogi is no exception. We also have seen, the whole chaos when it comes to elections, and it's another volatile place. Imo the same way. So when we talk about the security situation, does it concern you that over the years we keep talking about how we can get our elections saner without all the violence that often erupts?
I think that was what necessitated the peace pact that was signed by
exactly
the gladiators, so to say. But I don't think we'll record some of those incidences because the election is now narrowed to 3 states. It would have been obvious if it were a general election, because in such cases you see situations where the security personnel are overwhelmed, and equally in other cases you see them walking or tilting towards the powers that be, or tilting towards the party that is in power. Once they continue to do that, definitely the subordinates who are in the field, in terms of, I'm talking about the security men now, will be subservient to the appointers or to their superiors. Whatever the superiors tell them, that's what they will do. And who appoints the superiors? The powers that be. Who appoints the superiors? The party, that is the ruling party.
But the ruling party, what has the ruling party got to do with the appointment?
For instance, okay, when we talk about the national elections, for instance, where the president appoints the INEC officer or appoints commissioners, like what happened in Rivers recently. I learned the IG changed the commissioner of police, or so. That happened today. So there's no way the commissioner of police in Rivers State will not be answerable to the person who sent him there, who appointed him. That's the Inspector General of Police. And who appoints the Inspector General of Police? The president. And who
but these are institutions that shouldn't be subservient. Yes, they should be independent of these intrigues that often happen. So I don't think it's the institution that should be blamed. It's the individuals. There are two sides to it. If a commissioner of police is changed in a state, especially one close to an election, some would say maybe because this person knows the ropes and there's more a possibility of a compromise than a new person that might be brought to that state. So, what's your argument?
Well, that's what ought to be. In most cases, you see some of these appointees. I call them appointees. Or will I call them delegates? Or how do I even call them?
Delegates is very mischievous to call them now.
But let me withdraw that. When they are posted to this stage, in some cases they go with clear mandates. Make sure you deliver. Make sure you deliver this.
But how can security agencies? Let's analyze this. How can security agencies deliver? Call me naive, but I really would like to know. When you send the security men and in the field and say, ensure this person wins, what does that mean?
Okay, let me use Lagos State as a reference point. I remember situations where APC thugs or APC members were seen, cutting away with the ballot boxes or ballot papers.
They were identified as APC
members, yes. Right. But at that point, nothing happened to them. But if it were other parties, you would have seen what would have happened. Most of them would have been arrested and put in security vans parked beside polling booths. But that's what I mean. But when you talk about institutions and the policemen themselves or security men, the institutions are not truly independent. So there's no way you separate the institution from the people who are part of the institution. The institutions cannot exist without people. These institutions are subservient to the appointers, to those who appoint them to head, especially for people who are appointed to man or to head those institutions. You see that in some cases they are always answerable to the people that appoint them. Okay. So how will you separate them? It's not possible. Those who are subordinates to these people, to these appointees, to the powers that be, will definitely carry out the mandate given to them by people who have sent them, or people that are serving, or people that they are subordinates to.
So what would you really have done so that there would be so that there will be no compromise of any sort? The right thing should be done during our elections,
especially when it has to do with the appointment of the chairman of INEC. Once INEC is separated from politicians, once INEC is separated from the shenanigans of the system, when INEC becomes truly independent, as the name implies, that it will automatically flow down to other agencies. Because if a political party or a candidate misbehaves during an election, contrary to the provisions of the Electoral Act, INEC should be able to call that candidate to order. But in this case, when such a thing happens, they will definitely be waiting for the party or the head, the ruling party, to make comments before they will take steps to ameliorate that misgivings during the election. So that's just.
But what happens if? I'm not calling forth for INEC, but I'm just saying that these are agencies that can stand on their own. Ordinarily. I mean, the Constitution backs their decisions. Really,
they're not standing on their own.
That's your opinion about
yes,
it. But I'm just saying that what happens if you give INEC, be it even if you are the power that be, or the one that appoints, and you say, I want you to twist or go the wrong way, and INEC says no.
Well, if INEC says no, then the propagandist machinery of government will be put, will be displayed to give a dog a bad name because we want to nail it. I remember when some misgivings, we had some misgivings at the CBN, and the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria was removed at some point. I don't want to mention names. You heard what happened. Because he is from here, because he's supporting this, because he's not supporting that, which is not supposed to be. When these institutions are given true independence to act according to the powers of the act that created them, you see that things will begin to flow naturally. But in as much as they are appointed by certain persons, and those persons are either the ruling party or powers that be, there's no way they will deviate from it. There's no way we'll get it right. But one thing I know, and I'm promising Nigerians, is that Nigeria is an evolving state of nations. You understand what I mean? At some point, we'll get it right. Because you push to a certain level where it will no longer be that way. Definitely we'll have a Joseph who will say, no, we can't continue that way. Let us do things differently and see how things will manifest. Exactly. Like it's beginning to happen in countries like Rwanda and other developing countries like Nigeria.
How can we get there?
We'll definitely get there.
How?
Because one thing that is constant
because of your prayers?
Yes, it's change. It's change. One thing that is very constant in life is change. Now, you never can tell. But no matter what it is, as elections come and go, we get better.
But I mean, we talked about this. I remember when the Electoral Act was signed, we were all celebrating. Once and for all, we are going to get that kind of elections that we've always prayed for. But here we still are lamenting. So what's that, who's that matter that we're waiting for? Or that, what's going to happen or what's the KPI that we should be looking forward to see, okay, we are getting there because these are the indices that prove that this is going to be better?
The judiciary must be truly independent because the laws are there.
Back to the independence.
The laws are there. It's the implementation and enforcement that matters. And in as much as the judiciary is not independent and they are subservient to certain powers that be, these things will continue to play out. Who interprets the law? Who adjudicates? The judiciary. So everything boils down to the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary can call the electoral umpire to order. The judiciary can call the executive to order. There's nobody. But in as much as we continue to have people who are appointed based on clientelism and prebendalism as against meritocracy, these things will continue to play out.
Do you think that our constitution and the Electoral Act is ambiguous and not
is the Electoral Act truly ambiguous? No. Let me tell you one thing. That is section 211, there's a particular section I can't recall right now that talks about vote buying, that talks about inducement of candidates during elections, or that talks about you going with your mobile devices to the polling units or polling booths. Those things are there. But what happened in the last election? We saw that nobody talked about voters buying, or how do you call it, vote buying. I saw people giving materials, giving wrappers, exchanging gifts and all that during the elections.
Exactly.
And nothing happened. Nobody was apprehended. That does not mean that the laws are not there or they are ambiguous. The laws are always there, but implementation and enforcement is what matters. And in some cases, we discover that when these things are done in favor of the ruling party, nothing happens. It's only when it's done, by an opposition political party that you see the law coming out to be displayed and all that. So that's just it. But I think we'll get there someday and sometime.
That just reminded me of when the former president had to vote, and after voting, showed everybody what
that was not supposed to be
voted for.
There was a sense of creating the boots.
The boot was supposed to protect you.
So if the president at that level could do such a thing, so what else? What will you tell of the subordinates or those who look up to him? So we're not there yet.
We probably are not there yet, and I'm happy you are so confident that there would be that Joseph that would take us
at some point. Yes.
At some point.
But there's something again. Sorry, Joy. Let me say this. There's something that is not happening. This National Orientation Agency that used to make so much noise at some point when we were growing up. What has happened to it? We no longer hear about the National Orientation Agency. Is it that it ceased to exist? I think the government should answer this question.
Well, the National Orientation
still in existence.
It's still in existence.
Something has to be done because
what would you like done?
Sometimes, especially during the morning hours or evening hours, you see them, advising or trying to guide Nigerians on events of national importance. But these days, we no longer hear some of those things. Is it because social media has taken over all these things? People no longer listen to radio or television. They prefer to go on Facebook or WhatsApp. And
well, if that's the platform to find people.
I think so.
But even in those platforms, do you see the presence of the national?
No, we don't. We don't even see. Nobody advises anybody. Even orientation about elections, how to vote and be voted for, or what qualifies you to be a voter or be voted for. We no longer see those things. You go
but
there.
Political parties should also champion some of these awareness and
but they're limited. To what extent? There are some states where you don't have certain political parties. If you have an agenda, let's say to reorientate Nigerians or to educate Nigerians on certain policies of government, you cannot be everywhere at the same time. Especially when you look at the cost of doing this. It's only the federal government that will have the might or the muscle to be able to go around the whole country.
But it's in the interest of the political party to, above everything.
Who funds political parties? Where do they even get their resources?
Within themselves. Would you say the Nigerian political parties are poor?
Yeah, if a candidate comes out with so much resources or goes to the bank to borrow money, at the end of the day he comes and decides to steal money to replace what he has spent during the election, what happens?
So what happened? That's not a political party. You're just talking about one candidate. I'm talking about the collective contribution that often... Yes, exactly. That crowdfunding that often happens towards an election.
But they're doing that to the best of their ability. But I think they need to do more.
They need to do more.
We no longer look at merit. We look at propaganda.
Unfortunately.
Tell lies. This one will tell lies or concoct lies against the other person to be able to get people to himself or to a political party in support of a particular political party. What do? You condemn the other person. Like what happened recently when we were talking about, they call it results from the Chicago University. Somebody came up somewhere and said, Peter Obi's name was this. He had changed his and so name. You know, we're not looking at what that person is portraying. We're not looking at trying to say you can smear the other person, you know, to the advantage of your candidate.
Unfortunately, that's how Nigerian politics
That's how we are right now.
Yeah.
Condemn the other person to be able to get favor. Tell so much lies in favor of, you know, against the other person in favor of your candidate.
Right.
To be able to get or gather support.
So should we start looking towards sanitization of, especially our social media spaces?
I talked about this.
Yes, I mean, elections like this make these things very rife. I remember reading something about the SDP candidate, Kogi State SDP Guba candidate, who had to come out to say, no, I am still in the race. And that must be very tough for him, because if opposition has gone to town telling people, oh no, they have decamped to our place, chances are this person, people will go to the polls and not vote for him because it is perceived his loyal followers will believe he has decamped, and that's so dangerous. So we go back again to this social media regulation or sanitization. Nobody so far, or no substantial number of people, have been held accountable for what they do in that space.
I don't know how we'll get that right. But take note of the fact that if somebody lies, in trying to correct that lie, you may not get to everybody. You understand?
That's true.
You would definitely deceive some
people who would just go
not at that point. Probably they may not have been on air or close to anybody to give them that information. Maybe somebody is somewhere who has locked himself out of depression. He's locked himself inside the room, preparatory to election. Probably won't want to come out a day to the election. You don't expect that person who had locked himself as a result of depression to be aware of the fact that what he or she heard is a lie. So we continue to tell so much lies. The government itself is not sincere, it's insensitive to the plight of the masses. So who do we run to? Who do we believe? I had made up my mind at some point I won't talk politics again. But here am I today.
I wonder how you're going to, how are you going to not stop
gradually I'll come out of what happened, the shenanigans that took place in the last election, and give myself that courage, that hope that what lies ahead of us.
If people like you are disillusioned and you don't want to talk politics, or
every other person is too. It's not just me, because you know me. That's why.
No, I'm just saying that you of all people, you are a voice. You're a formidable voice. If you, who everybody knows can shape a lot of policies and maybe redirect government's policies, is deciding not to say anything. So where do you want this country to go?
Well, every other person has a right to feel anyhow, if he or she feels. But I'm telling you, as someone who was in the field, who feels highly disappointed with what happened, the shenanigans in the last elections. And I'm still trying to see how I can find a place in my heart to let go of what happened and have a reorientation, a rethink about the possibility of us having a better Nigeria.
Okay, having said that, I think it's a good time to go for a short break right now. We'll return to talk about the composition of these political parties and how INEC is going to fare running and coordinating these elections. We'll be right back. This is still Joy Asonye Live, and we've been discussing INEC and the off-season election. Now we're taking the conversation to political parties. During the general elections, we saw how a lot of people were endeared towards some political parties because of the presidential candidate. It didn't really matter much about who was running for governor, who was running for the senatorial seat or House of Representatives. It was about the presidential candidate. We no longer have that in these off-season elections in 3 states. So it would be nice to know if we would still have people still holding on to their presidential candidates, and because of that, vote a certain party. Barrister Mike Adinye is still here with us, and I'll just ask you that question. I remember, top of my head will be OB75, the obedience movement.
Yes.
It was all about OB, but OB is no longer in the ballot again. What is in need for the Labour Party?
You know, at that point, irrespective of the fact that OB was a tsunami, you know, in the political space, you know, INEC will not bring, apart from the logo, the candidates are not usually displayed.
Of
so
course.
It's the same thing. And what most candidates have done is to see how they invite, you know, candidates they feel have superior strength or publicity towards, you know, in their campaigns. You know, like the Labour Party invited OB, you know, during their campaign. The APC did that too, and the PDP did that too. You know, some prominent candidates in particular parties, political parties, you know, were invited during the campaigns within the state. You know, he said, no, the president is not involved right now. It's not a presidential election. But equally understand the fact that governors are the heads of their
executive
states.
Yes.
So it can as well be said that the governor is the president of the state, irrespective of what played out during the last election.
Right.
So we see a situation where party supremacy will hold sway. Candidates, you know, who are attached to some political parties will still come up. But it will not be the same thing. Okay. Panadol and Panadol Extra are 2 different drugs.
or rather, if you don't be paracetamol, you don't feel like paracetamol.
So it cannot be like paracetamol.
I love Nigerians. We have really funny
adages. Or it would have been if it were the general election where some candidates, you know, were held sway, you know, came up strong, you know. It's a different thing completely. Right.
Well, I read a report the other day that the Labour Party, for instance, the candidate of the Labour Party has decided to align with that of the PDP.
In which state?
In Kogi State. So, I mean, we're also seeing from smaller parties. I don't know. I remember calling them smaller parties and somebody getting offended. I remember seeing other parties, the not so popular parties, in other states as well doing. The ADC has done that with the APC as well, collapsing its structure for the APC. And it's what does it tell you about our candidates that go for these elections, the parties that go for these elections? Is it a plan in the very beginning that, okay, let's just run together, fill up those spaces, get a structure that you would eventually collapse, or they get to the kitchen, the heat is too much and they run? What is going on?
I think, you know, some parties don't having the muscles to withstand pressure from other political parties. I remember when I watched on television recently when Senator Natasha, you know, mounted the podium when she went to campaign for the candidate of a Labour Party. I saw the ovation, you know, that surrounded her emergence. You know, there was this shouting, hey, Natasha, Natasha, Natasha. No matter what happens, I'm just hearing that anyway. Like I said, I'd become disillusioned about the election, so not really putting in my best to understand what is happening in the field, especially, you know, what happened in the last election. But I think collapsing structures is, you know, at this point in time is timely. If a candidate knows that he will not win, because no matter what happens, you can go to the field, carry out a survey of how popular you are, how popular your party is, you know, to be able to ascertain whether you win the election or not. But if you discover that you know, you would definitely not win. There's nothing wrong with aligning with other political parties or anybody you feel is a force to be reckoned with to make sure that victory.
Why would you, at what point do you now declare that you definitely will not win? I've never heard politicians become that pessimistic. Usually you follow it all the way to the Supreme Court.
They just encourage themselves, irrespective of what happens.
Oh, really?
Yes, encourage themselves, because there's no way you tell me that you go to the field and would not know that, okay, this is what is happening.
Why not?
Also, that some candidates are more popular than you are.
More popular, then you work harder. Isn't that what it is encouraged in the political?
And it's so discouraging when you know that no matter how you work, whatever comes out will not be a reflection of your hard work.
So what usually
you just sit down there and look for an opportunity, like what we call in law, how do you call it? Technicalities, to see how you can emerge. That's
but I like this aspect. You've opened another kettle of fish. Let's understand it. No matter how hard you work, there's possibility it doesn't reflect the outcome, and there's possibility you can never win. Please enlighten us.
You have been in the field. Some persons get so dogmatic, they get so sentimental about political parties and candidates, irrespective. We're not looking at the individual this time. We're looking at the political party. For instance, there are some parties, I don't want to call any political party.
No, but let me get something straight. Who gets so dogmatic? The people, the electorate?
They're so affiliated to political parties and not what they have to offer.
Right.
Probably because we don't have ideologies that drive our process, our electioneering campaigns. And when you don't have that, people just say, okay, if it's APC, for instance, APC. You're not looking at the candidate, whether the candidate is good enough or whether he has a bad record, a bad past. You're not looking at that candidate or the credibility of that candidate. You're not looking at the political party, because you feel you're a member of a political party. If your party wins, you definitely benefit.
Is that what really happens?
That's what happens in the field. For instance, okay, like PDP. Okay, this person is coming, Dino is coming in PDP. You will not look at what Dino is capable of doing or what his incapabilities are. You look at by virtue of the fact that it's PDP. PDP is always right. The king is always right. So therefore, let us vote for PDP. You're not looking at the candidate. You're looking at the political party. How will you get results? How will you get candidates that will give you or take us to where we ought to be, you know, when we start looking at our terrible past?
But the past elections was quite dynamic. We saw people cross carpet in the sense of, I do support this political party. I'm empathic with them. I'm a member of this party. However, I believe in the ideologies or the blueprints that this person is showing me. So we've seen that in the past elections. Don't you think we're getting there when it comes to looking into what the credibility of this individual is? What
is common in most developing countries or third world countries is that political parties do not have ideologies. Like in the last general election, the ideologies of PDP were similar. And sometimes as if they don't even study what they come up with. The only thing that was different was the tsunami that came up with the Labour Party candidate. Otherwise, as if they just copy and paste. I will do this. I will stop unemployment. I will bring electricity. I will make sure that foreign debt is paid, or we're no longer owing. We'll stop importation of wealth. It's the same thing that runs through all the political parties. So nobody wants to think out of the box. The ideas rule the world. Not a situation where you just sit down and appoint people who copy and paste. You go out there and make some noise. And in most cases too, when these candidates emerge eventually, when they win their elections or by whatever means, it's as if they jettison whatever ideology and tow the same path. We've always had it the same path, the same way all year round. No difference. Nothing.
So what's
the essence of having ideologies, political ideologies? What often happens? You don't adhere to this.
So what often happens? Reality hits. Is it a case of not having studied the
our
situation
political
of the
leaders react based on the euphoria of the moment and not what they intend to achieve within a particular period. Okay, when something comes up, there's a policy that comes up, people will make noise. They say, oh, let's deviate from that policy and go this part. Not necessarily because it's part of what they have in their ideology. They just do it based on the euphoria of the moment. They're quite sentimental about it. They drive a particular process as if that is what they have in their minds. They don't look different. The only difference is the names of political parties on ballot boxes or ballot papers and not the individuals. But all of them tow the same path.
They do tow the same path. But the interesting thing here is that we know the people, the office of the citizen. I mean, the electorates know this. I mean, they're not having followed elections for so long. You understand that, okay, this person might be saying this in his blueprint. However, it might not be what you to expect when he emerges. It happens after one election cycle to the other. The promises are made that are not kept but the Nigerian person still holds that faith. Is it faith or hope?
How many of them? You say, well, let me say it in a local balance. How I go do to fulfill all righteousness. Let not be as if I'm not part of it. Let me just do it or follow them the way every other person is doing it. Not necessarily because they want to do something differently. Let me tell you what necessitated what happened in the last election. The only candidate I saw that was obvious that was towing a different path from the paths that have always been followed by other leaders of political parties was Peter Obi. And that is because of the person of Peter Obi. The youths were mobilized. There was this reorientation in the minds of the youth. There was this voter apathy that characterized the tsunami that took place. And that is why there's a particular candidate I want to mention a state who did not, of the Labour Party, who had given up. He didn't know that he had won the election. They called him, look, not because people knew him, but because they were looking at Obi, that the youth felt was coming up or coming out to act differently if he emerges. So these are the things that.
But do you think he would have acted differently? I mean, when you come,
if you look at his antecedent, the way he has been. For instance, okay, let me give a typical example. Obi will ask you, why are you coming to stay in Abuja? Were you elected to come and live in Abuja?
This is not a state. This is the country.
Yes,
and you think he will be able to...
You spent more time in Abuja instead of staying with your people to feel their pulse.
Right, but do you think he would have had...
He was doing it differently, even as a governor.
He would have been...
Look at his convoy. He picks his bag himself. Yeah, even as a governor, he will pick his bag himself. And if you say you're going to government house, this mindset that I'm going to government house because I want to go and eat, I want to go and drink, I want to partake in the national cake. But people tell you, no, please don't come to the governor's lodge or government house. I will visit you as a friend.
No, that's the questions I'm asking. If he had emerged, the likes of Obi, who you say...
Okay, at the level of, as a president?
As a president, would he have had that kind of, would he have had the kind of influence on state governors to say, there's no reason why you should be in Abuja
No, he would not have had that. And what I'm referring to is the way and manner he behaved while he was the governor of
What would have been different?
Well, these shenanigans, that characterize leadership in this country, like the leader is coming, there's so much noise and sirens everywhere. I don't think Obi would have done that as a president, because he would have rather been thinking of industrializing this country. I don't want you to look as if, well, I'm saying all of this because the elections have come and gone. The winner has been declared. That's why I can say or talk about this freely. After all, it's not a sub judice, it's no longer in court.
In court.
So we can talk about it. That has become part of our history, part of our development, part of our lives. He would have acted differently if he had emerged, because in fact, he was not hiding his feelings. And everybody knew that. And that's why the youths came out, because they felt that their future was in the hands of Peter Obi.
Okay.
That if any other person emerges, that he will see through the same path. Take note that we're leaving APC and we're now still in APC. So
exactly.
People got disoriented, disenchanted, disillusioned with the government, the erstwhile government. And therefore, there's this impression that if a new government comes, on that same platform, things will not be different. So thank God Nigeria is stable. We're thinking there will be a crisis, but as God will have it, everything is calm. There's so much serenity in the whole country.
Okay,
we're happy with that.
I'm just still going back to when elections are over and governance begin. Do you think this administration has gotten the support necessary from people who are of opposition? Do you think opposition even knows how to be opposition in aligning with government for
the policies of government?
Challenge it in cases where it does not fit into what the people would need, and not necessarily just challenging just because,
or make some noise because,
or just because it's not your political party. Do you think this government has been given that benefit of doubt to do as they should?
So far so good, if you ask me, because I feel as a person that it's too early to government. The government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came and met so much crisis in the country. Although he supported the previous government, his predecessors, but one thing is just supporting, another thing is being in charge. All we wanted was a change, and he supported that change with the change mantra. But for now, I think the government is still too fresh. Starting with one leg, if you ask me, it's very unstable. But I know that as time goes on, we'll be able to, it's what we call subsequent legitimization. Although we still have misgivings, but it will come a time where we just, okay, after all it's 4 years, let's just align and see how we can support this government to achieve her aims and objectives to take Nigeria to to the level where we've all been yearning for.
Right. You had mentioned something about how political parties, how people toe the line because of Mr. Obi and all of that. If you have to give me your opinion of how the Kogi State elections will turn out, I mean, I'd like to see your predictions. Saturday is in 2 days, so I'd like to hear what your predictions
will be. There's so much desperation in the air.
Yes.
There's
so
much.
Let's start from Kogi State. What would you think Kogi State, what's the turnout? What do you predict will happen in Kogi State?
I don't see people coming out to vote during Kogi on Saturday election.
Okay.
There's this voter party that will, especially people not having confidence in the ability of INEC to deliver. That will automatically discourage people from coming out to cast their votes. But the security agencies too have a role to play.
Okay.
They have to make sure that they're very careful in the elections. They don't have to apply that force. Nigeria is not a banana republic. Nigeria is not ruled by a military junta, and therefore they should be very careful in instilling discipline during the elections and not be seen to take side, especially in support of the ruling party. And once that happens, it will give a leeway, a window for people to start having that mindset that if the future is going to be better than what we've experienced.
This is Kogi State or
Kogi State.
How about Bayelsa State? Yeah, well, how about Bayelsa State?
Bayelsa State is very volatile.
It is.
But there are some critical stakeholders in Bayelsa State that people look up to. Where we no longer have such focal point of authority. No matter what happens or what had happened to President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, they still look up to him to decide. Wherever he toes, the party toes, definitely there are some persons who would give him that respect, that honor to toe that party. It depends on him. So he would use his opportunity, or like what Edwin Clark is saying. People see him as a critical stakeholder in the Niger Delta. Whatever he says or whatever party toes will be held,
in high esteem.
His high esteem, and people will do whatever he has asked them to do or he demands from them, especially the president.
Right, you're intentionally not telling us what political party you think
will emerge at the end of the day. I'm not.
You're not going to do that. Okay, let's go to Imo State.
I don't intend to do that.
Imo State at the moment is again volatile. There's
highly volatile. Prior to the elections, during the election, and after the election.
Exactly.
So all eyes, especially the security agencies, should be in Imo State because I don't see people coming out to vote, especially looking at considering the past. What has been happening, the killings. The unknown gunmen and all that. So if I were in Imo State, I wouldn't even come out to vote because my life is more important than that. If you like, bring 80,000. We've always had them, and at the end of the day, people still suffer. We still suffer casualties in Imo State. Imo State, sorry to say, it is a very volatile. It's not looking as if it's one of the states in Nigeria. If you look at the southeast, for instance, Imo State is most volatile.
Why do you think that is? Because I know it is political tension.
Yes. No. Prior to this political dispensation or whatever is happening now, yes. Prior to this time, we've had these misgivings with the governor and other people. Look at the bombardment in Okigwe and other Olu and all that. So it's a terrible thing. I think the southeast should look inward and see how they can correct some of these inadequacies or lapses. It's a terrible thing to behold.
Okay, so these young people who are going to be sent as ad hoc staff of the Independent National Electoral Commission, what would be your suggestion?
Their lives should be ensured because they are going to a war-torn area. That's all. It's a very volatile area, most volatile in terms of politics in this country. So whoever is going there, I don't know whether they are going to mobilize coppers to go and do that, but I think it's a risky venture, like going to a war-torn area.
Okay. So in general,
there's no likelihood of free and fair election. I know what happened recently, where I was made to understand that most hotels in Imo State were owned by the governor or the government. So I don't know why that happened, and for obvious reasons, I don't know why. So you can see that even prior to the elections, even long before the elections or before this election period, we still had some of these misgivings, and it has continued even after the elections. So
could this be for security? Is that why the hotels are fully booked?
That has not been substantiated. I don't know why or what necessitated that. I don't know. I'm not sure about it because, like I told you earlier, it dampened my morale. When I discovered that INEC did not do what they had preached prior to the general election. So I'm really not keen to knowing so much about most of these volatile states. But I think that they have their destinies in their hands. If they actually desire peace, the government, the powers that be, these critical stakeholders have so much to do to talk to their persons or talk to their people. You cannot fight, you cannot kill. Matters of the many for the benefit of a few does not tell of a good environment or good behaviors. It's not an environment where you can nurture children or grow children, to develop with the right senses.
So, peace accord, finally, that's where we will go. Do you think it has enough influence? During the general elections, the peace accord ritual was done, and after that, as politicians left that stage, you heard them say such divisive comments that at that point Nigeria was quite volatile. It did not matter. For the sake of winning elections, so many unprintable things were said to each other, and this kind of body language that was sent. I mean, you were active during the elections, and you saw what happened. Again, we have come again to sign the peace accord. Do you think it's even a ritual we should continue at all?
To me, the peace accord is like signing a love letter. Because,
a love letter?
A love letter, yes.
I don't love letters very impactful.
No, you can say that at the end of the day, parties go out and do things different from what they had signed.
No, because I used to really appreciate love letters. I would rather you don't use that.
Why I'm saying so is this, I don't know. Probably I would have used a different thing. Okay, let me tell you why I'm saying so, why I have this feeling about peace accord. I had taken part in the peace accord that was organized by His Excellency Abdul Salam Abubakar,
the former head of state.
The former head of state, and Bishop Hassan Kuka. But taking part, then I acted for and on behalf of NDCP, and then other political parties. We all converged at the International Conference Center to sign the peace accord. But at the end of the day, what happened after the signing the peace accord? People went back and returned. You can't watch the sport of a leopard. If you know that somebody has this particular tendency, he leaves that peace accord in pretense, then goes back home to do something different. Instead of going to talk to their supporters to see how they can maintain peace, they go back and say, grab the ballot box, pick the ballot box, do whatever it is, just make sure that your candidate emerges. You understand? So the peace accord now has been reduced to a letter that does not have any bite or influence on the voters or supporters, or how they call it, or critical stakeholders in this country.
Barrister Mike Adinye, thank you so much for being part of the program.
The pleasure is mine. I like talking about Nigeria, and I hope and believe that someday, sometime, we'll have the Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we've all been yearning for. We'll
all walk towards having this Nigeria of our dream as the ball is on all our courts. But this is where we draw the curtains on Joy Asonye Live. We'll be back tomorrow with so much more. So do have a wonderful evening.